And all right. Art in the Stone Age. Finally getting to course content. There are some very important things in the book. And I'm expecting that you had read chapter 1. It was not particularly very long. And it basically covers some architecture, such as Stonehenge, some sculpture, some painting. That's kind of it. And you probably noticed that there were 2 maps at the beginning of this chapter, and this is 1-1 Stone Age sites in Europe, and you can see there are a few up here in the northern Alps, and there's a lot in southern France and the Pyrenees, which is this area right in here. And they have a second map, which basically covers various places in what we now call the Middle East, Turkey and Iraq and Jordan and modern day Israel. And so that's the geographic area. At the end of this class, I'll show you that there've been many, many more discoveries. The reason they're concentrating on this, I can't speak for the author personally, but these are the sites that were mostly discovered a long time ago. And so they're kind of traditional. They're the ones that have been studied for a long time. And there are many other sites that we'll talk about at the end of the hour that have been discovered in many other places all over the globe. And so, let's see, I gotta get this so it fits the. Okay. Now, why this is not fitting on my screen, it's not fitting on that screen either. Let me see. I have no idea. And so what I wanted to show you, this is the a room in the you guys ever have one of those days where everything you click is like not right? I have no idea why this is not fitting onto the screen, but this is a room in the caves at Lascaux, which is in southern France. And these are among the first that were ever discovered. And what you have to know about these, first of all, is that they only survive this kind of art in places where the environment has not changed for tens of thousands of years. And the kind of ways that they painted, the kind of pigments they used, they didn't have the high-tech kind of paint that we have today. A lot of these are very, very fragile because they were drawing with elements like charcoal, and they were taking earth pigments and applying them onto the surface. So this is actually quite remarkable that this has survived for such a long time. Second thing is that these are very deep inside the caves. Almost invariably, they're very, very deep, which is there's some theories about why that is. One is that the people who painted these didn't want intruders or foreigners to know about this place. And it also accounts for why these weren't discovered for such a long time. And so there is some other issues germane to this. And I went and took some stock photos of contemporary or recent, last 300-400 years, of dwellings of people on various continents. And so here is a dwelling from Africa, and I want you to know right off the bat, and having some Africans here, they will be quick to tell you that it's not a monolithic place. There are many countries and many cultures across this vast continent. But the idea here that I wanted to show you is that as far as we know, people have been living in shelters somewhat like this or some of the others for millennia. And there had been some theories about whether the ancient peoples actually lived in those places that have the cave paintings. And partly you can take these arguments either way. My colleague in the department says that ancient peoples never lived in these caves where you find the paintings. And he points to the fact that we know they were hunter-gatherers. And so being way back deep in a cave is not particularly conducive. But then there are others who talk about, well, a cave provides shelter, it provides warmth, it's the original geothermal dwelling. And so the debate goes on, and we talk about some of the artifacts that are found in caves and how many caves have no artifacts that point to the fact that people lived in the cave. So it's still an ongoing question. But I want to show you that this is from Africa. This is from Polynesia. I don't remember, but Polynesia is a vast area with many, many cultures. It's basically the island cultures of the Pacific Ocean, and they stretch out for thousands and thousands of miles. But they have, in many of the cultures, kind of a shared way of building their dwellings. I'll go back here to this, and this is a little bit more substantial, and you can see there's a door here. And what could possibly be in this culture is that you have to have shelter that would protect you from threats from the wild. So this is enclosed, it's got a door if there are lions or other preying animals, that you would be safe inside your dwelling. In Polynesia, not so many predators. And so basically the air flows through, the climate is conducive to not needing. What you really need is to keep the rain off you and stay dry, and that's basically what this does. And so in such a shelter, you could cook and your fire wouldn't be put out by the rains, which in most Polynesian places, it rains a lot. Yeah, it's heavy downpours sometimes. And finally, I have this from North America. And again, Native American cultures, indigenous cultures are not all the same. But what I want to point out here is that this is from Plains Indians, the tribes of the Great Plains. And bottom line is that they were nomadic people. And so they were hunter-gatherers as well, but they followed the buffalo herds. And they were seasonal. If it got too cold, they moved south. They would follow the buffalo for sustenance and so on. And so this is a shelter that does everything you need. It keeps you warm in the winter. It's got a open top so that you can actually build a fire inside of here, and the smoke will come out the top. And it has a door, basically, which is more or less a flap. And if you need to keep things out, this is as much as a deterrent as necessary for these people to survive. And so they could fold this up, they could move on, and that's how they lived. They were nomadic people. Not all Native American cultures lived this way. I want to make that clear as well. You go down to the Southwest, there are native cultures that were cliff dwellers, and they were the people building adobe structures in the desert, and so on and so on. So, and in the northeast of the country, they built great lodges and things. So, bottom line, my point being, there's a lot of evidence that these ancient people were hunter-gatherers, and they probably needed to live closer to where they could gather the food from plants and hunt for the meat. And so this is an example from another one of those early discoveries, and these were discovered right at the beginning of the 20th century. Lascaux in France, Altamira in Spain. And these figures we believe, are pretty accurate, that this is 13,000 to 11,000 BCE. So, got a question. What is BCE? It used to be before Christ. Before Common Era. And this is why I bring it up, because for like when I was growing up, it was BC, before Christ. And in the Western cultures and in Christianity that accompanies the Western cultures, the calendar is based off of Christ, before Christ, and then you have AD, Anno Domini, year of our Lord. But in order to respect cultures around the world, we just refer to Anno Domini as the common era. And you'll see that in this book, Common Era, and this is before Common Era. They're synonymous, but more culturally sensitive. And so what you have to know too is that in a lot of cultures around the world, they have different calendars, and mostly based on their religious beliefs. And so, like, what is it in the Jewish calendar, like 57 something? I forgot. I had that on it. But at any rate, we call it the Common Era now. And so, but standing bison, this is like pretty amazing. People that long ago were making this kind of artwork. I want you to tell me something as you're looking at it. Maybe some of you just for the second time, first time when you read through it. What do you think about this as art? And there'd be probably no question that this is art. It falls squarely into those activities that we commonly and almost universally look at as art.
I think it is pretty impressive, especially taking into account that there has been cognitive progression in humans over that amount of time, probably a pretty big one. The fact that they probably did it with their hands or with just wooden sticks or something like that makes it even more impressive. Yeah, and of course, the way they placed it in those like select caves, because of course, like erosion, they knew that erosion would really be to them. So I think overall, it's just pretty amazing. I like it.
It is, yeah, I agree with all of that. How about anybody else? What do you think about this question, talking about other things that you may or may not find impressive? If I were to ask you, what is the degree of realism or naturalism in this? And that is a pretty important issue when you look at art, ancient, modern. Yes, go ahead.
I'd assume there's a pretty big amount of realism in there. I'm assuming were already like religions or like deities, or like gods or something they would pray to. But the amount of realism in those paintings kind of indicates to me that they're in general a pretty realistic. Like their culture would focus on what was right in front of them instead of just like huge on religion, whatever they did.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I want to unpack some of what you said here, because you actually said quite a lot. I'll go backwards. We're talking about religion. And one of the issues about art is that whoever made this thought it was important enough to make. And so religion, as I was talking about just the other day, about how there was this core culture where science and history and music and art were all tied up in this central core culture. That's usually at the center of all of that is religion. And so bottom line is that this was important enough to do. They didn't do Homer Simpson, they did bison. And so we know that for some reason they thought it was important, and this may be, as we know from other cultures, that they may have looked upon bison as a deity of some sort. It may have just been important enough to be, it may have been something of an illustration to train their young hunters. And there are some of these cave paintings that have these little chips in them that people wonder. Still haven't quite proved one way or the other. But there are some who had believed, probably still do, that these were like illustrations for target practice and stuff. They'd go in a cave and they would throw spears or weapons or whatever they had. This is where you hit the bison to kill them, because fundamentally at that time, things were wild enough that it was literally kill or be killed. If you didn't kill that bison, you might be his say. So anyway, but then there are other people that say maybe that wasn't the purpose at all. Maybe other people had intruded into this space and come into this cave and saw those bison. And because they're done in such a naturalistic manner, realistic manner, if you will, that they got frightened and threw their spears and ran away. And you got to remember too, I hope I'll just keep this in mind, that these are in caves that are really, really deep into the earth. And so until, like 150 years ago, the only way you really got any light was with fire. And so you would carry a lit torch in there. And from experience, I'm sure, that doesn't really produce a lot of light, and the kind of light it produces is very uneven. Yeah. And you would walk into this room in a cave and it wouldn't be quite as lit up, say like our classroom. This would like appear out of the dark, And there are some people that wonder exactly, because lighting is an issue, that was another obstacle to being able to paint this stuff in the first place, along with all of the other issues involved with the tools they had, the materials they had, and the skill level. The idea of naturalism is pretty amazing. And as we go through, you'll see that there will be various degrees of naturalism, and the counterpart to that is symbolism, where things don't look exactly natural, but they have enough of the attributes or the characteristics of something that you can recognize whatever it is as a symbol. For instance, when I talk about a symbol, you can do something like this. Now that doesn't look like anybody I know, but it is a symbol. hastily drawn, kind of uneven. I would use technical assistance to do it. But bottom line is, you see this, and that represents a male figure. And you trust it enough that if you need to go to the restroom and you're a male, you will go in the door that this sign is on. So that's a symbol, but it's not natural. And so we have these two caves, and here's some other ones in France that date back a little farther. Get this down here. There's some things here that are really kind of interesting. First of all, they're spotted horses. And we can basically see enough of it to know that they're horses. The degree of naturalism is moderate. We don't think the horses' heads were like quite that small. Could be, but probably not. We haven't found any evidence of that. The spotted horses could have been. There is some degree of how life evolves on the planet and stuff. So it could have been spotted horse. But what's interesting about this one is this negative hand imprints. There's one here, one there. Nice one up here. We don't know why they did that. In fact, there's still a lot of mysteries surrounding all of this stuff. But this, how would you think they would do that? There are some theories. We'll see if we can. You guys are artists. Yes.
I would think like their signature is general writing language.
Yeah.
So how they sign it.
Yeah, that very well. Yeah, I think that's certainly. How do you think they were able to pull this off? They didn't have Krylon, spray paint or anything.
I would just say coal, but charcoal. But I mean, I don't see why they would draw such a huge circle around their hand. I mean, maybe it's because so all the fingertips are like the fingertips are showing and whatever. So I would say charcoal, but it kind of looks. My first thought was they put a hand there and then they burned around it, but that's of course no one does that. So yeah I'll go with charcoal.
Yes.
Maybe it was the charcoal, but wet charcoal. So they put them in and like put it over it. So like,
Yeah, possibility. Actually, and what you guys are doing is coming up with theories about why and how this was done. And the things you're saying fit right in with a lot of the literature and the study of this. There's another thing about how it was done that some scholars are proposing, have proposed, is that it was charcoal, kind of like what you guys are talking about. And they can sample that. It's the pigment. But they're thinking that there may have been this, they had figured out that if you had a hollow reed and you had wet charcoal, like you say, in your mouth and you kind of spit it and sprayed it out through this, you could do something like this. And that would account for the circular thing, because this would be the mode. You'd be doing this, just like this. And so that's it. And that's actually in line with what you guys are saying too. So, yeah, absolutely. One of the things that scholars use this artwork for, and I was talking about species and evolution, a lot of times they use some of the evidence of the artifacts found by ancient people to try to figure out what kind of natural fauna and flora existed 13, 15, 18,000 years ago. So, when they look at this stuff, detail of a horse running, this is from Lascaux. And we still find a lot of things that are kind of mysterious. And you guys were talking about signature. And I think that's really kind of that's a kind of a human thing. We didn't have basic written alphabet then, but we do have things like this, and we're trying to account for it, and that could be, as you were saying, that could be a signature as well. This is a horse, running horse. And I wanted to say this too, while we were talking about the evolution of various species. We know that the horse, as we know the horse today, has not really been around that long. And in fact, they say that some of the earliest horses were really pretty small, but that as they became, quote, domesticated, it's kind of like dogs too, that we raise them, we breed them, we try to pull out the best, most desirable characteristics, speed, strength, size, disease resistant, so on. So these horses like here that, you'll see a lot of them in ancient art, the legs are real short, but that actually could be more natural than symbolic. And so, more from Lascaux. And you see, Lascaux is kind of a perfect example that there are a lot of paintings in the caves at Lascaux. And they have various levels of naturalism. And so you can see, we think this is a person, looks like a person, kind of like my symbolized person right here. And we see the woolly rhinoceros, and we see what this is likely a carcass. And this guy was likely a hunter. And likely, as I was saying a moment ago, about if you didn't kill the bison or the woolly rhinoceros, you may be his lunch. That's probably what happened here. And so, but the styles are not the same. And this is still, yet again, a mystery. But I want to add this. They kind of fall within a range. They fall within a range in terms of subject matter, which is almost always something to do with animals, usually large animals. And so we think that this may have, as I kind of alluded to a while ago, about the hunt. It's a big important part of whether or not you and your people survive. And again, this kind of core culture and religion playing a big part of culture, as it still does today, quite honestly. Yes.
It could be like you said earlier, maybe like teachings, like maybe like the younger and kind of like I guess not adults were brought up kind of in the caves and they were taught with the paintings and stuff about bison and animals like that.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, You can really play with that theory a lot too, because think about it like this. I think this is exactly what you're saying. Like, piggyback on the thought. It would be kind of dangerous if you were to bring your young sons and daughters out on a hunt. They would be easy prey. They would not know how to defend themselves. They wouldn't be very adept using a spear or anything. So, bottom line is that having a safe place where you could, this might be the first graduate school. Yeah, exactly. It's very much about teaching. And so, yeah, so much there, but yeah, we kind of know about how hunts go, and it doesn't happen so much anymore. But 100 years ago, there were a lot of people that would go out and they would call that big game hunting, and they would go into places that were still relatively wild, and instead of being armed with a spear, they may have a flintlock rifle or something. But you wouldn't bring children there. Chabot Cave, another from France. And this is actually, we think, older. And you can kind of pick out, I forgot to do this. Or roach. I don't know what that is. It's some kind of animal. I was going to be smart and tell you what that was, but rhinoceros, a woolly, why not rhinoceros? At any rate, I think that's a kind of a pig, but I'm not sure. Bottom line, these are not particularly finished out drawings. Some of them are not filled in, but I want to, hey, some of you artists out here, if you were to draw like this in drawing class, what kind of grade would you get? Depends on the assignment, I know. I would say this will get you a high grade. Partly because it may not be quite as natural, and illusionistic is another term I want you to think about through this class. It's not as illusionistic as the other paintings we've seen. And yes,
It kind of looks like a sketchbook.
it does look like a sketchbook. And when you're doing drawing, a lot of places still, even yet today, say keep a sketchbook. And what you want to do is what we would call gestural drawings. You don't fill it out, you don't complete it, but you capture the essence. Yes.
I also think it's pretty interesting how they played with like sizes, especially with the voices.
Yes.
How the voices keep getting smaller. So in order for the viewer to see the voice all the way in the back, you just decide to align it and vary the sizes.
Yes, absolutely. It is interesting. This is like, as you pointed out, some of you other guys have been talking about too. This is pretty sophisticated stuff. And yeah, this could even be part of that learning curve that you're talking about. This is a colt. This is a 2-year-old, 4-year-old, an adult male or something, whatever. But yeah, just simply amazing. Deer hunt. This is actually, we know what's going on. We have we have the figures here. And again, the figures of the people are only quasi-naturalistic. They're somewhat naturalistic, but they're somewhat symbolic too. And probably of course, this painting's not in really great shape, but probably the most naturalistic part of this is the deer. And that's another question that's been raised about these cave paintings, because they do put people in the compositions, sometimes, mostly not. And when they do, they're sort of nondescript. It's not like you get a drawing of a person that you would recognize. It's stick figures, by and large. And this is in Turkey, and it's circa 6,000 BC, so it's 8,000 years old. And so sculpture, this is the second category. And this is one of the oldest artifacts that we know about today. And we think it was 3 million years before the comet. And so you can see, resembling a human face, it looks as though this pebble, which is really what it is, see, it's only 2 3/8 inches here to here. But it does appear that it had been manipulated by a person, that these eyes, this mouth, and this part, the nose, would not likely happen without some manipulation. It's just, it's possible, but not particularly likely. So we have some evidence here that people have been making art for a very, very long time. It's part of who we are as humans. It's what humanity does. We make art. And so, and you can see this is from South Africa. Again, we're moving around the globe. Namibia, the Apollo 11 cave, and this is a feline with human feet. It's a cat of some sort. Namibia, Apollo 11 cave. Did you guys read about why that was? Well, they discovered this in July 1969. Is when they discovered this cave with these artifacts in southern Africa. And so they just named it after the time in which they discovered it. As I say, when we move away from Europe, the discoveries are more and more recent. But charcoal on stone. And so somebody had the wherewithal to find a piece of slate or some kind of stone that would provide a flat surface. And since it's not, at least in its present form, not attached to anything, we kind of wonder if this may have been included as a sculpture or something that would be portable, unlike the cave art, which is stationary. But at any rate, this depiction, and this is 28,000 BCE, it's not unlike the stuff we're looking at in Southern Europe. Skip one. Yeah. This is from the Alps. This is kind of an interesting sculpture, 35,000 BCE. And this is a human head with feline, lion. And we start to see this in some of the ancient art that, and this kind of lends some credence to the idea that animals and deity and humans are kind of interconnected in that sort of way. And we do see evidence of that. We'll see evidence of this for thousands of years. We see that in Mesopotamia. We see that in ancient Egypt, the Anubis, the guard with the head of a wolf. We see that in Greek mythology, the satyr, the minotaurs, and so on. So that's kind of a thing, and we know that it at least goes back this far. As I said, the Southern Alps are in Central Europe, Northern Alps, Southern Central. And I put this one, I put a star by this one. And what I'll do in this class on these PowerPoints, I will put a star. I had it by the first slide, but I was trying to get it to fit the screen. These are the kind of examples that you would find as the first example that would pop up. You're talking ancient sculpture, you're talking ancient painting, you would find the Lascaux, Hall of the Bisons. You know, I'm not preferencing one or the other, but if it has this, you'll be able to find a ton of information about it because it's been well documented, well researched. And so Venus of Willendorf from Willendorf, Austria, the Northern Alps, was found 100 some odd years ago. And it's in the Natural Histories Museum. So this is the intersection between natural history and art history. Of course, that's what we've been talking about all the time. Bottom line, this is not very big. It's only 4¼ inches high. And one of my colleagues actually made one of these on a 3D printer to scale. Bottom line, this has been, like most of the rest of what we've seen, been well researched. There have been many theories about why this is what it is, and few definitive answers. One definitive answer is, as I put the underline this, limestone. One of the things that you should know about sculpture is that there weren't the tools or the means to actually use harder substances for sculpture. And I'll go back to the previous slide. Woolly mammoth ivory. That's an ivory tusk. It's hard. It's an interesting material, but it's not like trying to go through marble or granite or casting metal or anything. So most of what you'll find, if they are carved objects, and almost 100% are, it's going to be of a soft material, limestone, and they have tons of it in the Alps. But there are many theories about what this was about. And considering some of the issues that we've talked about, religion, survival, priorities, where would this, how would those ideas explain something like this? Yes.
survival was the main focus, so childbearing was. That's why it was more focused on their bodies than an actual thing.
Yes. That's a very, where'd you go to high school?
Shed.
Ah, yeah. Did they talk about that? Or you just
No,
learned?
I just really like history.
Good on you. Yeah, I do too. Hey, and you're spot on with that. And that's something that I fully believe too. And we talk about priorities and women's bodies and fertility. Women are, without women, the species dies out. And there are a lot of theories about how ancient societies were structured. Sandra.
I don't know. A lot of these cultures use relics like these a form of worship because, of course, this is not a visual representation of what a nude woman looks like. At least I haven't seen one like that. But, my mom always used to talk about this. We have a bunch of things she dug up in our living room, and a lot of these relics, as weird as they might seem, were actually kind of immense religious value to them. And like she said, natural reproduction back then almost had like a whole different meaning to it because you didn't have condoms, you didn't like sex itself was
Oh, yeah.
more precious and
Absolutely. Yeah, you guys are both like knocking it out of the park. Use a baseball metaphor. Bottom line is that is so true, and keep in mind that the cultures were more unified, so there really wasn't a whole lot of separation between religious beliefs and what was necessary for survival and deities and what your place was in the society and so on. There have been, as you said, you haven't seen women quite proportioned like this. That's been a topic surrounding this particular sculpture, and it's been used to promote the fertility, childbearing issues because everything is oversized. You know, it accentuates the female reproductive role. Yes.
Also, this was, I mean, it says it's in Vienna in the museum, so was it found around kind of in Europe or was it found?
Yeah, it was found in this town or right outside this town called Willendorf.
Yeah, and so maybe it could be like in more of like an African country or kind of like that. It was more about the hunt, but in Austria, when there wasn't so many natural predators, it was kind of more of a different kind of culture. One more about like gathering instead of going out on big hunts and trapping buffalo and stuff like that.
Could be. Although, you know, it depends. And you could be right. I think that what we're finding is that there are variations in how cultures are set up from one place to another. And I think that the common thread, which is something I still amazes me, is that art seems to be one of those common threads, no matter what lifestyle or what deities or what religions, whatever, the terrain, the climate and everything. So, and oftentimes how should I say, the artwork is tied into some aspect of that religion. And so fertility, see, people have theorized that because it's so small, it may have been something that someone kept in his or her pocket or something. It would be like what we would modern day say a good luck charm. that if you had this is what it is. The probability that you have children. And so, again, because we don't have written history, we really don't know, but a lot of evidence is piling. And ahead of a woman, and when you start to see figures that are more identifiable, they tend to be women. And just for the reasons you guys laid out, probably woolly mammoth ivory. And ivory is still a highly prized commodity today. You see the commercials on TV save the elephants because they're poaching them, depleting the populations for this. This is they call this at one time white gold. Woman holding a bison horn, and this is what you would call low relief, and it's a kind of sculpture that's somewhat akin painting and drawing, and somewhat akin to sculpture because it has 3 dimensions. Is how we see the form, but it's not fully 3-dimensional. So we call that bas relief, BAS RELIEF, relief, which means low relief. And so that's what this is. And it's been, again, we have the enlarged breast, we have the, and the other thing is that having the horn. You know, we don't know, we can't trace everything back, but a lot of times what I see, having looked at a lot of ancient art, is that some symbols show up that kind of mirror some of the language, some of the idioms that that we use today, like the horn of plenty. That's a saying in Genesis. So that is that Genesis, another ancient reference. Is that this would be a vessel that you would put water, wine, or you could use to carry food, fruits and stuff. So anyway, the idea, and I want to go back on this here a little bit because we see that here, and that's hair, but that's probably, that could be a headdress as well, or it could be robes. And see this here, we don't really understand what that is, but there's significant reasons to believe that this is like a crown. It shows a high status of women who could bear children, which is, as you say, it was essential for the culture to have children and reproduce. And if you were such a person that could deliver a lot of babies, you would have this. And we think that's what this is. It's a symbol of status, kind of like a crown or something. And we see this going on here, and that actually could be meaningful as well. And so, yeah, that kind of takes care of a lot of the stuff. The fact that she would have this horn kind of brings out some issues of status. And here is a rock relief cut on the right wall. This is in France. And this is the carving, and this is the drawing. This is kind of what it is. And it's a reclining woman. And again, 12,000 BCE. And here, this is like spectacular. Like clay. clay bison in southern France, the two Lake Tuck, Audouber. No, anyway, sorry. And so this is like, it's still a relief because it's attached to the floor or the wall, whatever you want to call this rock. It's immovable, stationary, but it's kind of remarkable in its naturalism and its realism. It's you could almost make a modern model of what these bison look like based on this relief. And again, another soft material, clay. It's made from a reindeer antler, bison, licking its flank. And this is from Turkey. And we see a lot of ancient art starting to be discovered in places in the Near East, the Middle East. And so the stone T-shaped pillar, animal reliefs. And again, we've only seen really two subjects here through all of this, animals and women. Yeah.
And also, it seems as like time goes on, I guess the art becomes, because this is more like sculpting and carvings, but earlier on it was just like crude paintings and everything like that. And it seems like art has developed as well, as like with the culture and everything like that too.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think so. I think that to make sculpture, to make things three-dimensional, make three-dimensional art requires a higher level of technical prowess. You have to deal with whatever this is. And Santa Lafura, which museum, let me see, what is, doesn't really say what, oh, no, doesn't say what these are made of, but likely some soft stone. But you're right, it's yeah, there's a level of sophistication that comes with. And this is the human skull with respect from Jericho. And we think basically what this is a death mask, and which is something that some cultures still do, and we did in the US for a long, long time. And that is when somebody died, they took a casting of their face to remember them forever. So this is a real human skull, and it's got this plaster on top of it. And we think that there were seashells in here for the eyes. One of the things that I found interesting about this particular piece is right up there over the right ear. Here on your left. Xander can tell you about this. They don't do that anymore, but in the old days when they found, archaeologists found things, they would just write on the artifact themselves. They would catalog it and put a number on it or something, you know. I don't do that anymore. We don't.
Oh, I don't know. All I know is about all these finds that I was not allowed to have like any friends over because they would push. My mom was afraid of getting pushed over, so my mom took very good care of her, like the stuff she did. I don't think I've ever saw writing. But
Yeah.
again, she started digging. I don't know, it was like 95, so that's pretty recent.
Well, yeah, pretty recent. Yeah, this was likely. I don't remember when it was found, but it was quite a while ago. And yeah, before World War II, these things, yeah, it was just, the attitudes have changed, and your mom exemplifies that. That's how we take care of stuff today. Never in a million years put some numbers on something quite this fresh. And so, figure from Jordan, roughly the same time period, inlaid with vitamin. In Jericho. One of the things that I got to say about ancient studies is that archaeologists and historians and anthropologists and all kinds of people, they have so many tools at their disposal now. And one of the things that we know about, one of the things that allows us to discover more, I should say, is satellite imagery. You guys, any of you are geeks like me, watch that show, What on Earth, on the Science Channel?
I think I've seen a few episodes.
Yeah, well, what they do is that they basically pull out satellite images, real satellite images, and then they present these images to different experts of different kinds of things, military experts and anthropologists and whatever, historians. And they try to figure out what this is a picture of that the satellite took. And it's kind of interesting. It's kind of boring too, because really, sometimes you could look at it and tell what it is. But bottom line is that there are so many tools. There are things that are found, like in places like Egypt. Yes, I could give you a hard example of this. They found these little pock marks all over the desert, just west of Cairo, out in the desert. They said, well, this is kind of interesting. There's these little pock marks. They're kind of regular. And so they went digging around and they found out that in fact that was a burial site. And the pock marks were mummies were dug up. But ground penetrating radar, they got chemical analysis, they got all kinds of physics and science at their back. And so that is a big way that we understand more things. This is some of the ancient architecture. And as you see, this is a lot more recent because architecture, as I was stating at the beginning of this class, much of it was not permanent in the ancient world. And so I wanted to show you this. This has got a star by it, Stonehenge. It's almost time to go. I'll pick up where we left off. But before you go, any questions? All right, well, we'll finish a little bit on chapter 1 and talk about chapter 2 on Monday. Have a good weekend. Be safe. You guys are good. You're vaccinated. You got the shirt. I didn't get a shirt. I love it. Man, those are really cool shirts too. You got your lacrosse shirt though. That's
I'm fine with not having it. It is kind of cool though. Not gonna lie. All right, you have a blessed weekend.
okay. You too. You too. Bye.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank you.
weekend.
You bet. You too.
Thanks.
All right, you
Have a
too.
good day.
See you guys. Yes, stay cool. It's gonna be hot.
Absolutely.
today.
I will.